Good morning, everyone. I wanted to drop us in a little bit today, starting with a little bit of breath. If you know me, you know that's something I love to do. I also wanted to thank everybody who made this event possible, the seen and the unseen people. And Victor, I just really was moved by your presentation. I'm actually still collecting myself from that this morning, so thank you. I think that the reality is that this world is complicated, and that to do good work and to stay resilient, in my own personal journey, psychedelics has helped me do that, because I do wake up and return to a world that is not the one that I wish it was, but I'm here to do the work to make sure that my legacy helps it become the one that it should be. And I think that these events help move us toward that so that everybody is free and that there's liberation for all. And I think that the concept of movements has been talked about here at this conference. And if we're not moving together, then what are we doing? So I'd like to remind us in this just next 10 seconds, as we drop into this breath, that let us move together like we breathe together. Let us be conscious of that wave and that force, this very simple thing that makes life possible. So if you want to close your eyes, I invite you to do that. You can drop your shoulders away from your ears. Maybe your hands find your lap if that feels good to you and your body. Relax your jaw. Feel your feet on the ground if that's possible for you. Soften the belly. And exhale fully from the mouth. And breathe in through the nose. And exhale like you're blowing out candles. Give yourself 2 more of those breaths at your own pace. If it feels good, you can float your hands to your heart center, the left hand at the heart, and the right hand on top of that. And just take this moment to remember why you came here. To remember what your work is in this movement. To remember the love that moves through you and out into the world. Ashe. You can float the hands down, open the eyes, maybe give a little wiggle. And thank you for dropping in.
Thank you so much for that, HANIFA. So over the last couple of days, we've been so fortunate to hear from amazing speakers about the latest in psychedelic research, psychedelic therapy, psychedelic venture capital, psychedelic business, psychedelic commercialization, and so much more psychedelic. We're here to talk to you about the remaining 90% of psychedelic use. In other words, we're here to talk to you about psychedelics in the real world and what we have heard about on the psychedelic peer support line during our first 16 months of operation.
So we feel that we are at a very unique vantage point, because the psychedelic peer support line, which we found, which went live in April of 2021, is where the rubber meets the road. okay? So we are supporting people and talking to people who are in an active trip, so actively tripping or in an experience.
We talk to people who are integrating psychedelic experiences, whether they happened a day ago or a decade ago.
We talk to people who are trip sitting with their friends.
We talk to people on a whole host of psychedelic substances, whether it's MDMA or whether it's robo-tripping, DXM.
We talk to people who have microdosed mushrooms, and we also talk to people who are on a hero's journey.
We talk to people in northern Alaska and southern Florida.
We talk to people who are angry with their ketamine providers for not providing them with any integration support.
We talk to people who are psychonauts, and we talk to people who watch Good Trip Netflix, took 5 grams of mushrooms, and thought it would make their depression go away.
We talk to people who are on the verge of ego death and those in the aftermath of that.
And we talk to people who have therapists and integration coaches, and we talk to a lot of people who don't.
And so we have now had 6,000 calls on the Psychedelic Peer Support Line. And we want to share with you a slice of what we've learned during these first 16 months. And here are the top 10 takeaways.
So the first is some real talk. Psychedelics can create real risk for emergency services. This is a very common type of call that we receive. And when people reach out to us thinking they're in need of emergency services, it's almost never because they actually do. It's because they're terrified of being alone and they feel like they may be dying. And what's really needed is someone who is there to simply listen, to assure them that this too shall pass and they don't have to be alone during the experience. But what if the caller hadn't found out about us? We think that one of the greatest risks to this beautiful movement that we're all a part of is that the narrative that psychedelics can really be powerful healing tools can get derailed if people start showing up in emergency rooms, seeking emergency services, and being traumatized in so many ways because of that.
So preparation is harm reduction. And so what we're seeing is that the folks who haven't done any preparation are the ones who are at most risk. We also understand that preparation makes grounding and integration a much easier process. And lastly, that when we are prepared and have done the inner work, we are able to navigate the experience from a deeper place. And so when what we're seeing is a lot of people are coming new to these experiences and to psychedelics and don't know what it means to prepare, don't know where to find those resources, don't have any examples. And so when we prepare, we know that we are reducing harm and potential risk as well.
And our next lesson is that integration is also harm reduction. It's not the icing on the cake or the cherry on top of the icing after your fancy psychedelic journey, but integration itself is harm reduction. I'll tell you the story of our very first call to Fireside, which I think is kind of emblematic of a lot of different types of calls. It was from a person in a part of the United States where they didn't have a psychedelic community. They had had a mushroom experience and really experienced some profound and destabilizing insights. And then they went and told their therapist about what had happened. And the therapist said that this person had probably damaged their brain by taking psychedelic mushrooms. And this person was spiraling down into depression and potentially suicide, and fortunately found out about us. And so a sizable percent of our calls from people who are contemplating emergency services are from people who are integrating, are trying to integrate. a psychedelic experience. So there's really no way to understate the importance of integration, not just for healing, but also for staying safe.
Oh, there you go.
That's it.
Is that that's the one? Oh.
Yeah.
So we are more than a bad trip hotline. And we're so grateful for all of the media that we've received in the past year and a half. And there's this narrative that comes from the many years of the war on drugs in terms of, a bad trip. It's all about, psychedelics are about having a bad trip, or you might have a bad trip. And so the reality is like the journey is a journey, and there's a lot to learn and experience and understand from any psychedelic experience. And yes, the Psychedelic Peer Support Line is available to those folks who might be having challenging experiences and need holding and need support. And as Josh was just saying, also many of our calls come from folks who are integrating an experience that may have happened last night or maybe even 25 years ago. We're also looking at supporting people who are having a euphoric great time and just want to know that someone's there for them. We support people via call, phone, and text. And so often folks who are in an active experience and are really enjoying it or just wanting to know someone's witnessing them will text to say, is someone there? I just want to know someone's there with me. And you have no idea what kind of grounding and comfort that offers folks. We also know that though people have therapists and integration coaches, what happens when it's a Monday and your next appointment isn't until Friday evening with your integration coach and you're really going through the thick of it? What do? You call Fireside Project.
So our next lesson is that press coverage that touts only the benefits of psychedelics isn't just wrong and irresponsible. It also puts people at really significant risk. Yeah, thank you. If you go into a psychedelic journey thinking that your anxiety is going to go away, your PTSD is going to go away, in the same way that a headache may go away if you take aspirin, you're setting yourself up for real disappointment. Because what happens the next day or the next week when you still have many of those same feelings, or you're still having to do the work to work through those feelings? In addition to having to do that work, you also have to, or our callers are having to cope with feelings of failure, feelings of disappointment, feelings of anger at the articles they read or the media they consume that really set them up for this incorrect view that curing a really challenging disorder is as easy as just popping a few mushrooms. And the next lesson is that peer support must play a foundational role in the psychedelic field. So what is peer support? I like to say that peer support is really psychedelic. It's just people helping people in a non-hierarchical way, checking your credentials at the door, and using your own lived experience to support someone else who's going through something similar. And when people reach out to us having an intense experience, often what they want to know is, it's going to be okay, and it's going to be over soon. But it turns out that you have a lot more credibility to say something like that to them when you've actually had the experience yourself. And we really feel like for this psychedelic movement to work, it will have to be because peer support plays a foundational role. There aren't enough therapists, there never will be. Integration doesn't work on, as HANIFA said, a timeline. And so peer support has to fill in the gaps when you need processing and you don't happen to have the resources or the time to see a clinical professional.
So choice and representation matter. It's really, really important. And at this time now on the support line, somebody who identifies as transgender or as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, or military veteran, can call or text the Psychedelic Peer Support Line at 62 Fireside and ask to speak with an affinity peer. And that means that they'll be matched up with a volunteer that shares that part of their identity. And that means that they can connect with that person as they're integrating their psychedelic experience. And we know that choice and representation matter across so many different sectors, in the medical field, in the classroom, and it is no different in psychedelic harm reduction. To be able to speak with somebody as you're processing perhaps one of the most powerful experiences in your life with somebody who shares part of your lived experience is really profound. And often we see, when we're talking about care, that the person seeking the care is the last one to actually have any power into who they're going to be working with and what they're going to be doing. So again, empowering people to connect with somebody who represents their lived experience gives them that power and that choice. And they feel like, as Victor pointed out to us today, that they matter, that who they are matter, that the communities they come from are represented and important. And so we've had very powerful calls and texts come in over the past 4 months since this initiative launched. And I'm really proud and just like my heart swells when I think about this equity initiative that we've launched this past year and the people who came through and said yes. So we were able to bring on 40 volunteers as part of the sort of first wave of affinity volunteers. And moving forward, our intention is just to have the support line volunteers come from all types of communities and representation. That's our goal. And we also know, in line with representation mattering, that in the field now, the psychedelic field that's emerging here above ground in the United States, that representation in terms of different lived experiences across all types of demographics are not present. And so our contribution is to be able to help create pathways to support folks who work on the support line for a year, who come from those communities, to have access to educational opportunities and advancement within the psychedelic field. So we've partnered and are collaborating with institutions like Naropa University, CIIS, Fluence, MAPS PBC, and many others, as well as different researchers and clinicians in the field like Dr. Monica Williams, Dr. Robin Carhart Harris, to name a few, to be able to offer paid, I'm sorry, and via, wait, what's going on?
We have 1 second.
Oh, you're just coughing. I'm sorry. I'm like, what's happening? To be able to provide paid internships for the Fireside Fellows, as well as completely full scholarships into the psychedelic facilitating trainings, so that might ease the way and lessen some of the barriers for folks to be able to advance within the field, so that in time, and we know this is a long game, that in time, the psychedelic field looks like what we want it to look like. It is represented, and that people feel like they are represented in the space and feel like they can come for those services and for that care. So the equity initiative is very valuable to us.
And thank you. That's all we have time for at the moment, but we feel like by the end of the decade, we'll have 1 million calls per year. That's what other national hotlines that are fully funded hit. And so we feel like this is going to be we hope this will be a vital part of helping everyone have less risky and more beautiful and healing psychedelic experiences.
I just want to say that it was Julie who was coughing, not me. I think she wanted to participate because she's part of the advisory board too, and it's an honor for her to hear. And anyway, such a nice tradition, be here with my friend Julie Holland and all of you. And I want to remind everybody that you can ask questions in the bottom of your If you turn your badge, you can find this code, QR code, and you can ask questions. So please go there, and you will find a question, and I will start with my own questions. So Josh, you mentioned in your bio that you're a aspiring psychedelic researcher. There's a lot of people here, potential mentors, and maybe you can have a minute just to talk about this other side of yours and find connections and what are your plans?
Sure. Well, because we speak to so many thousands of people at Fireside, we thought there's a lot that we could learn about psychedelic experiences that we can share with the community so that everyone has more healing and less risky trips. And so our first study we did using post-call surveys with UCSF and also Rachel Yehuda at Mount Sinai. We've submitted it for peer review, and generally speaking, it shows that we offset the burden on emergency services. We have other studies going on right now that look at our equity initiative and how and why that choice to speak to a volunteer sharing your identity matters. How does it affect the topics that are brought up? How does it affect healing outcomes? And so we're working with UCSF, with Oregon Health Sciences University, Christopher, and also Dr. Monica T. Williams at University of Ottawa.
Cool, and are you going to be author in those studies as well?
Yes, I hope so, if they'll let me.
Amazing. And HANIFA, why can't you just take the opportunity to just share it with folks? How can they support? How can they be a part? How can they donate? What they can do?
Sure, thank you. So without community, we're nothing. And I actually just want to shout out if there are any Fireside volunteers in the room, if you could stand up. Or make a noise. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Because without the volunteers, they're literally on the front lines. Without the volunteers, the Fireside Project would not exist. We would not be able to do this mission and to move it forward. And so these are people who dedicate a year of their lives, give 300 hours in that year to make sure that this safety net, this psychedelic safety net, is tight and available, every 365 days a year, 12 hours a day. And so to do that, we need to continue, we need folks to want to be interested in volunteering. We have maybe 3 times a year that we onboard, so please go to our website, join our mailing list so you know when the next onboard, when you can apply. We really need people applying who are dedicated to this to keep it going. And if you also want to check out our first year, our impact report, to see what we've done in a very short time and also with small amounts of funds, go check that out. And if you feel so inclined to donate, you can do that on our website as well.
Thank you so much. Victor, I want to also ask you a question, and this is also coming for our own experience doing work around race and psychedelics. Whenever we do anything progressive and talking about social justice or race, we get a lot of hatred in social media. And I think a standard comment that we get from folks in this field, unfortunately, is why are you guys talking about race? You're this cult and you're creating divisions and you are bringing negativity, and psychedelics is all about being one and there is no race and we are all part of a single humanity, and on and on, and you're Marxist and whatever people think is an offense. How would you respond to those kinds of comments?
It's a bypassing of dealing with the issue, right? Yes, we are one, right? We are, but that we live in a duality, and there's a reality to that. And so I think there's a self-serving element to that narrative of not having to deal with the reality and the duality and the uncomfortability of having the conversation and taking responsibility.
And as a segue, can you talk more about how can we empower, especially young people, BIPOC folks, to come into this space and to help shape a new, more inclusive psychedelic future for all of us?
Yeah, I think they should be on the board for these kinds of conferences. I think they should have space to speak and tell their stories. I think that that we should be talking about who comes after us, right? Young people have the energy. Young people have the ideas. So like, how are we infusing them into what we're doing, and allowing for them to create, right? Psychedelics for me is a tool to like consciously co-create our reality, our world. So like, who is not participating in that, and why, and how do we open up that space, right? And my hope is that showing up, right, and making space that, you know, maybe next year we'll have a BIPOC student thing where we open up some presentations for BIPOC students, or some of them who are here, who are in their masters and are like, what's going on? I want to be part of this. They should be up here instead of me.
Yeah, I also want to put in my 2 cents of the importance of working with younger generations. I myself, I'm 51 and try to have as many young people as possible around me because it's a dynamic reality. And I feel these new generations have so much to teach us. Their levels of tolerance for heteronormativity and racism and transphobia, all of those things are much lower, and that's such a blessing. Again, folks, you can vote your questions. I'm going to read here the next one. You can vote them, make your questions, and also vote the ones that are already there. There's a question for Fireside, either of you. How long was your longest phone call?
I think, yeah, so we don't put a limit on calls from people tripping, and we've had calls that are close to 4 hours.
Okay, there's a question saying, what were the 3 last lessons? However, I feel you guys gave all those lessons already, so I'm gonna jump that one.
Can I say one lesson that I didn't get to talk about?
Of course.
We get a lot of calls from people who have been abused by their facilitators, and then they've been gaslit into believing that this was part of the normal healing process. So I think this is probably, I think like an under-discussed aspect of this psychedelic field that we all need to address.
A lot of also research questions, I think, from all the calls you get, so many research questions and calls to action as well. Maybe you can put a call to actions on your next presentation. I've been following closely, and it's so amazing to see the progress. I mean, in Portland, you said it was 5,000 calls, and now it's 6,000. So I know it's going on fast, and you're learning and documenting as you go.
Yeah,
that's so good.
One really easy call to action is if you're part of any kind of organization or any kind of listserv, let them know about the psychedelic peer support line, especially the equity initiative that HANIFA talked about. If you're a vet, if you're BIPOC, if you're trans, you can reach out to us and speak to someone sharing that aspect of your identity.
Being a multilingual and multicultural nation, do you receive callers in the need of other language communication? What are the challenges to cover this basis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely have received calls and support and questions around if we offer other languages. Currently now, we have a roster with our active volunteers, and on that roster, they share the languages that they speak besides English, as well as other information like other types of calls they're comfortable taking, or what affinity groups they're interested in working with. And I believe that there's definitely, we've had calls in Spanish, and we also have, there's at least 10 other languages represented on the line as of now. I'm not sure how many of those calls, how many calls we've taken from other languages outside of English and Spanish. Do you know of any?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, not totally sure, but we also, our large vision and time is to be able to have the Psychedelic Peer Support Line be a worldwide service and have different affiliates in different countries where folks from various countries are the volunteers, are doing the training and supporting their countries and their communities.
Victor, there are two people here asking if you could explain the video. One says that she or he or they is hard of hearing and had a hard time following, and the other person just simply doesn't really understand what was the point of the video. Can you break it out?
Yeah, so we were, my best friends and I were in a therapy training program. That was the first weekend. It was literally the orientation that evening in Philadelphia, and we were on the way back from the training experience, and the police officer pulled us over because of the tint and I guess the license plate cover was dirty or something. Pulled us over, and within 5 seconds of walking up to the car, my friend in the back, you know, this is the drill for us, right? When cops pull us over, hands on the steering wheel, my friend in the back put his hands in a prayer position, right? So that he can see his hands. And so within 5 seconds of walking up to the car, he's like, "Why are you holding your hands like that? Is there a gun in the car?" Right? And so things started escalating, and the way that we were able to diffuse the situation was by saying we are social workers, and then having to prove that by talking about the 302 process, which is how you commit someone, and saying we support you when you have those situations, right? And there was a whole, you know, the video's longer than that, but eventually we were just, you know, he pulled us over for no reason other than, yeah, so that's what happened. Yeah.
Thank you. And also, when you, I mean, I don't know if the question is pertinent, but like when you like express your feelings through this beautiful like presentation, can you talk more about like art, or have psychedelics anything to do with the way you find your presence in the world and express through art?
Oh, for sure. Well, I think I might have lost my mic.
Come here then.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the whole point of my talk was that we're able to rewrite our narratives and how that impacts our reality. And for me, I've always been a creative, an artist, kind of I'm an introvert, but expressive arts has been like the way that I kind of break through that. And I was able to rewrite kind of my narrative, like who am I? So I have other art, other poems that I didn't share today that talk about my depression and my insecurities and all of the things that were weighing on me in the world and how I viewed myself in that. And this poem that I shared with you today came after I was able to have healing experiences and shed all of the narratives and shed all of the stereotypes and the labels and the expectations, and then write on a blank piece of paper, who am I? Mm.
My question to Josh is a little unfiltered. You can answer which way you want. Can you tell me about your challenges with fundraising and interactions with donors?
I think that it's hard to fundraise and also like run a growing organization. So part of it is just the sheer amount of time. Another challenge is like you can spend months trying to get a conversation with someone who you think is going to be the perfect funder, and they're like, actually, the person you should really talk to is this person over there. But I think as a general matter, you know, we've had some success with philanthropy, but we're also just seeing that when crypto crashes or there's an for this vital service. And so I think when we think about how can we create an enduring service that lasts a long time, it's given the fickleness of philanthropy because of just a generally tumultuous economic situation. It's caused us to want to contemplate potential revenue streams so that we can kind of stand on multiple forms of support.
Well, we're coming to the end of this portion of the program. I really want to ask for an applaud for the presenters who are doing their work fiercely and tirelessly. Fiercely? A lot of vocabulary. And have been doing there, independent of the funding or, against discrimination and bias and all the challenges that it is to be in this space. We open up talking about mainstreaming and corporate psychedelics and the way professionalization and scaling up is not necessarily inclusive of all of the things that need to be included. And I think we had some really good examples of lived experiences and heart and soul poured into this work. So thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you.